most part, we have seen you under the radar since your huge wins in Florida, Illinois, and Arizona. But Saturday night, you logged into a social distancing party hosted by DJ D-Nice. Our own Sonny was there as well. Now, is this social distancing at its best?
I saw you, Mr. Vice President.
Well, all I really did was give a thumbs up. I was, Simone Sanders clued me in on that. You know Simone.
Yes.
Well, I also wanted to ask you about campaigning in the age of Corona. You can't hold events or do big rallies. You can't shake people's hands. How worried are you about losing those personal connections in this new world? And what will virtual campaigning look like?
Well, the irony is virtual campaigning, I'll probably reach more people than I would out there shaking hands. You know me, I like to see people, look them in the eye, answer their questions directly. But as I said, they told me that when I did that online piece yesterday that something like 3.5 million people watched it. So I don't think, with the new technology available, I think I'll be able to reach and make my points across the board as well as I could if I were out doing a big rally. And a matter of fact, I guess it's more one-on-one actually now than it was then. But you know, we have to have our democracy function and take care of this crisis. You know, in the middle of the Civil War, we had an election. In the middle of the pandemic crisis of we've had an election, in World War II, et cetera. So we can do both. We have to do both.
So it's me talking about elections. I want to talk to you because last time you were on the show, physically on the show, was after Iowa and New Hampshire. And, you know, the naysayers are like, oh, Joe, yes, it's all done, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. And, and we did suggest that to people that they take the time and let it play out. So when it was dark and doom and gloom, what kept you boistered? What kept you going?
I think I said at the time on the show that I viewed from the very beginning the first 4 or 5 primaries or caucuses as the first step. And I talked then about the fact that we'd be in a situation where we would be able to deal with this, particularly in South Carolina. And we're going to get to where states that represent look like America. And then we went to Super Tuesday, and you know, the interesting thing is that not only did we win, but participation was way up. It increased by almost 70% in Virginia. It increased by, I don't know, 30, 40% in Missouri. It increased in North Carolina. And most of those people were people who came out and, fortunately for me, voted for me even though I didn't have much money to spend in any of those places, because they're the basic Democratic constituency. Minorities, particularly African Americans, have been my base my whole career. In addition to that, working folks, hourly workers and middle-class workers, suburban women, you know, the base of the Democratic Party. And it was totally represented. And so I felt very good, and I felt fairly confident, but I'm kind of superstitious. Before a primary, I don't make any predictions, but I felt good, and if the primaries were able to continue, I feel good from this point on. Because I think, look, Whoopi, the good news is the bad news. The bad news is people know me. The good news is they know me. So it's hard to pin something on me that's not accurate. It's easier to pin things on me that are accurate. So I just think it's we're in a different place.
Well, we're not going to jinx this for you, but Bernie is the only person in your way to the nomination, and he is considering his options and reassessing his campaign. Have you had any conversations with him? Because people did criticize him for staying too long in the race last time around, although he may disagree. Are you worried about that happening again?
Look, I have not had any personal conversations with him. My staff and his staff have had discussions. I think it's up to Bernie, as I've said. I got asked this question about every other person that had been in the race. It's not for me to tell them to drop out. They can make that judgment for themselves. And so it's up to Bernie what he wants to do. But I hope at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we're all together, that we don't have a little bit of what we had last time where some people stayed home. Bernie and I have always gotten along well. I have nothing but respect for him. And so I'm just looking forward to the point that he may sit home and say, well, maybe things are going to change in the next month or two, these primaries push back. I don't know. But I'm happy to talk with him, and I've indicated that I also hear his supporters. There's a lot of folks, some didn't show up and some have to show up. He's had very strong support from young people, and I hear them. I've been talking with Elizabeth Warren, who is, as you know, bright as could be and committed. I've adopted a couple of the things that she suggested, the new bankruptcy bill she has, which is the way to fix the problems that were broken. I think from the beginning, I think I said on your show a couple times that 12 years of education is not enough to be able to succeed in the 21st century. So I've moved in the direction that Bernie had suggested of free public university tuition. And I have been in the position where I think we should be spending significant money on the HBCUs that have always been behind the eight ball. Free community college, but I also think we should be in a position where if you go to a state university in your state, you get your free tuition paid for by the government. We can afford that. That's within a range that it's affordable to get it done, and it only increases marginally what I was going to spend in education. So and we have to focus more on, and I have, on debt forgiveness for people who have these skyrocketing tuition bills, and I think we should tie that into public service. And so there's a lot going on, but I hear what some of his supporters are saying, and I'm prepared to, and I have moved on some of it. So I hope we can bring it all together. That's my expectation.
It seems that will be music to the Bernie supporters' ears, Mr. Vice President.